Hi, this is Josh Kulp. This is the video for Avodah Zarah Daf Het through Daf Shevui. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the context of a Braita that appears at the bottom of Daf Het Amud Aleph. It is a very strongly anti-chutzlar, it's anti-diaspora Braita. The Braita reads, it was taught, Rabbi Yishmael says, a Jew living outside of the land of Israel, or Jews living outside of the land of Israel, are idol worshippers in purity. Meaning, I think that, as Rashi explains, even though they don't intend to worship idols, it is as if they are worshiping idols. How so? What's the case? How is it that they're worshiping idols? A non-Jew has a feast for his son, assumingly a wedding feast, and he invites all of the Jews in his town, even though they eat their own food and they drink their own drink and their own servants are serving them. In other words, there are no technical breaches of halacha here. Everything is kosher. Everything is only touched by a Jew. All the full array of hilchot kashrut. The verse relates to them as if they ate from sacrifices of the dead. As it says, he will call to you and you will eat from his sacrifice. In other words, the very act of living in Chutz La'aretz, living outside of the land of Israel, is basically akin to idol worship. If we look at the context of this in the Tosefta Parak Bet, the Tosefta in chapter 2 of the Tosefta of Avodah Zarah says that an Israelite should live, a Jew should live in Israel, even in a city full of Israelites, and not in Chutz La'aretz, not outside of the land, even if there are a city full of Jews, because there is something about living in the land of Israel that is superior than living in the diaspora. That's the viewpoint of this Braita, and it goes through about being buried in the land of Israel, the value of being buried. A couple notes, though, on the context. All of those Braitot that surround it, this context of this Braita in the Tosefta, do not appear here in Avodah Zarah. So there's rabidly anti-living in the diaspora Braitot have been removed from the context over here. So automatically the context sort of tones it down a little bit. Now, the other points are a little bit more subtle. By toning it down a little bit, we remove the Braita from its context of the ontological superiority of living in the land of Israel. And it sounds more like what this Braita is really saying is not there is something superior about living in the land of Israel, but there is a problem with associating and with non-Jews outside of the land. And I'm not going to go too far into that topic, but it does seem to carve out some possibility for the existence of Jews outside of the land of Israel, perhaps if they're simply not invited to, or not invited at all frequently, to non-Jewish feasts. Now, it goes even further, because immediately after this, we get a strange section that just immediately says, all 30 days, whether he says to him because of the celebration or not, it's forbidden. Meaning 30 days after the celebration of this wedding feast, it's prohibited to join him there. That limitation, right, has nothing to do with it, but it sets up some limits where, like, later on you will be able to be eating at the table with Gentiles, again, as long as you keep kashrut. And in the beginning, it sets limits for the beginning, and the beginnings and the end, and really only at the mishteh, only at the feast are you prohibited, whereas I would argue that originally, really, the whole issue is not the participation in the festival, but simply eating at the non-Jewish table. So I think that there's been a shift in context. The Bright has been removed from the context in Tosefta Avodah Zarah. It's been shifted over to a less of a outstanding living outside of the land context. And there's been all of this stuff appended, which comes originally from a different sugya altogether in Ketubot about when you do the Sheva brachot, or what we call the Sheva brachot. And it's clear that that's the original context of this 30-day thing, and whether he says to him because of the celebration or doesn't say to him because of this celebration. That's all clear, that the original context was in Ketubot about something different altogether. So I just wanted to point out briefly how the context of something can shape how we understand it, and temper it down, even if the words are basically the same. It's something we do a lot in the academic study of Talmud.